Hey everybody, welcome back to an all-new episode of 10 to Life with me, Annie Elise. Now we're going to be talking about the Mica Miller case today because I feel like literally every single day there are new updates. There's either new documents that are being released, JP is going on this media tour, talking to people. It seems like it's been difficult to keep track of everything that's really going on in this case, but it's one now that we know where the FBI was originally investigating it for financial crimes. Now they are opening a criminal investigation. There's been new court documents filed, new information. So I wanted to just come on here, break it all down, kind of sift through the weeds, what's true, what's not. Let's go start to finish, have one singular comprehensive overview of this case. Because what we've been trying to do lately is get back to the roots of this channel, jump on the mic and give full updates. And a lot of you guys have said that you've appreciated that you enjoy these formats. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to kind of go through the whole case, start to finish, including all of the updates, everything we know. And then you tell me, what do you really think happened to Mica Miller and why? And even more importantly, and even the bigger question that's stumping myself as well, is who the hell is JP really? So guys, let's get right into it. So on April 27th, 2024, police were called to Lumber River State Park in North Carolina. There, they found Mica Miller's body. Now, Mica was only 30 years old at the time of her death, and Mica was married to Pastor John Paul Miller. He was a pastor with the Solid Rock Church in Market Common, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So following her death, multiple memorial services were held in Myrtle Beach to honor Mica, who friends and family say was just an extremely involved member at Solid Rock Church, where she sang and where her husband was the pastor. One man said, quote, "She was just the nicest person you ever talked to. She was very uplifting, very supportive, always helping. She was just so nice." Also, a woman said that Mica baptized her daughter and also played an active role in the church's youth program. So as police quietly began an investigation into Mica's death, the news of her death initially shocked everyone, but not in the way that you might be thinking. See, nobody knew that she had died until her husband, Pastor John Paul Miller, gave a very bizarre sermon to his congregation.
We're not going to do an altar call today. Instead, I'm going to have you stand up and I'm going to make an announcement. And after the announcement, I'm going to ask that you leave church quietly and don't talk about the announcement here in the building, please, if you can, so y'all can stand to your feet. Before I make the announcement, I also want to say that my request to you is that you will continue to come to church and serve and give for the next little bit, because I don't want to have. I'm taking a little bit of a break, and I don't want to have to worry about the church. My break may be a few days, a few weeks, I don't know. I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. And it was self-induced, and it was up in North Carolina. And we're going to have a funeral for her next Sunday here at 3 p.m. And so it's all I can, I'm just kind of going on adrenaline right now. So y'all pray for me and my kids and everybody. And y'all knew that she wasn't well mentally, and that she needed her medicine that was hard to get to her.
Now, this clip was posted across social media platforms and instantly went viral, guys, because not only is the statement shocking in general, yes, but it was also kind of said in such a crass manner from her husband, who is a pastor, of all people. And on top of all of that, the fact that he literally started out by saying that everybody needed to leave quietly after he was finished with his statement. I mean, the whole thing was just strange at best, and in my opinion, almost pathological at worst, and it kind of just left everybody just feeling like something wasn't quite right here. But then, as quickly as John Paul's announcement of Mica's death went viral, all sorts of different information began coming out, which made this entire situation just all the more puzzling. Many people felt like there was definitely way more to the story than John Paul was letting on, and Mica's family echoed these same sentiments. So let's talk through all of that. So Mica originally filed for divorce in October of 2023. In this document, Mica claimed that JP cheated on her very often, that he treated her horribly. Anytime that Mica tried to push back against JP's behavior, he would apparently threaten her with things like locking her out of the home, telling the church congregation about her issues, which, P.S., he had already done in the past, and he would also throw her stuff in the yard. Now, during this time, Mica was staying with her sister. Mica's sister said that during this time, JP also sent her very threatening messages. He would say bizarre things, such as he was going to stay outside of her house with a gun until Mica came home to him. So Mica's sister ended up calling 911 during this incident. Mica eventually went home with JP, and the case was dismissed in February of 2024. Back on March 11th, 2024, so a little over a month before she died, Mica's tires were completely slashed around 1:30 a.m. at Springmaid Pier. She claimed that this was also the second time that a razor had deflated her tire within that week. When she took her car in to get her tires fixed at the dealership, a mechanic actually ended up letting her know that not only were her tires slashed, but there was also a tracking device on her car. So Mica reported this tire slashing to the police. Then, later on, at around 11:30 a.m., she called the police again. According to the police report, Mica reported, quote, "A man who she has been avoiding came up to her at a gas station. The suspect pulled up beside her and tried to speak with her. She told him to go away, and he sped off before she could record this encounter. He also has been calling and texting her from a private number despite the fact that she has blocked his number." The report also stated that Mica noticed, quote, "strange activity," and believed that people were following or watching her. She then told police that she feared for her life, and that she tried to get a restraining order against this suspect, who was not named in the police reports because no charges ever came from this complaint. In an affidavit, her sister, Sierra Francis, asked the court to be the special administrator of Mica's estate. And in this affidavit, she says, quote, "I know my sister has expressed the abuse and violence against her by her husband to others, including family members and members of the church congregation. Mica told me that there were people following her, keeping track of where she went. She thought that Mr. Miller hired people to follow her. Mr. Miller later confirmed this during a sermon which I watched. Mica confided in me that Mr. Miller was moving assets that were in his name, such as his vehicle, also changing the deed to their house to their church, transferring interest in Crocodile Rocks to one of his sons, and in February 2024, Mr. Miller removed my sister's personal items from their home that they shared while she was admitted to a mental health facility, and then he left them at an apartment of a woman named Diana. My sister was not aware that her personal possessions had been removed from her residence until she was released from the hospital. Prior to her admission to the mental health facility, Mica was gathering and sorting the evidence that she had to bring to an attorney for filing for divorce, so that it would support her claims against Mr. Miller as to his abuse, his character, his paramours, and associates that he, quote, paid off or blackmailed. While at the facility, those documents, emails, files, etc., were all removed from her phone, personal laptop, vehicle, and purse, and they were never recovered. Further, Mica was unable to access her iCloud account, her email, or her Facebook profile. Mr. Miller continued using at least one of Mica's accounts, causing any recipient to believe that it was Mica's communications. Mica even talked about what she wanted her life to be like following her divorce from Mr. Miller. Having traveled for a church mission this past fall from October 15th through October 27th, 2023, Mica was intending to participate in additional missions, even to live part-time in Kenya. Mica recently shipped some of her personal items to Kenya in preparation of her stay there. My sister was hopeful for her future after filing for divorce from John Paul. My sister also expressed to me that she was fearful that she would not make it to the divorce and that her life would be taken from her. It is my belief, based on the conversations with my sister, that she told multiple people, including other family members. Mica stated to me on many occasions, quote, "If I end up with a bullet in my head, it was not by me. It was JP." Now, coincidentally, this was the same time that Mica was admitted to that hospital. An affidavit has indicated that Mica was hospitalized because JP said that she wasn't taking her medication properly. He said that it was affecting her mental state. Now, Mica had been taking lithium to treat her mental illness since back in 2017. JP said that Mica hated taking her medication, though, because it made her gain weight, it made her slur her speech. He also said that she was being influenced by her church friends, who said that they could just pray her illness away. So because of this, JP said that Mica was having psychotic breaks, and thus she needed to be hospitalized over it. JP had the power of attorney over Mica's care, so he's the one who hospitalized her in February 2024. But was this payback? Was this truly for her well-being? A lot of people wondered what the truth was. What was the real motive behind this? Now, while she was in the hospital, JP also took her purse and her car keys. Then he went to go find her car, which had been left in a parking lot. And JP said that he did this because he was worried what Mica might do when she left the hospital. See, according to him, she was prone to these manic episodes during this time of the year. She had a history of impulsive spending, and he was really worried that she would try to sell her car to then fund some of her purchases, some of that impulsive spending. JP stated that he was incredibly upset as well because Mica had been having these psychotic episodes. And at one point, he claimed that Mica bought a gun and that he was the one who was scared that she was going to shoot him. He was begging her family and all of her friends to help her, but apparently, according to him, they all refused. However, Mica's family and friends, they tell a very, very different story. They think that JP often exaggerated Mica's illness and that Mica had not stopped taking her medication. She just went from taking 2 pills to 1, which was allowed under her medical regimen. It was allowed that she could reduce the dose if she wanted. So while she was hospitalized, JP was upset that Mica's family just wasn't working with him. And he actually threatened that he would prevent them from seeing her in the hospital if they didn't work with him. During all of this, Mica's father, Michael, asked to see the papers that gave JP power of attorney over Mica's care. And when JP showed him these forms, Michael noticed that they weren't signed and they also weren't notarized, meaning that these were not official documents. And Michael actually thinks that JP faked these forms to somehow convince Mica that he had the right to hospitalize her. Just another example of the mental and the emotional control that he had over her. And things were just getting crazier. Mica filed for separation from John Paul just 12 days before her death. And according to her obituary, they got married back in 2017 after first meeting back in 2009. It's also been alleged that she was 15 years old when they first met, but just to give you a little bit more context behind the timeline of how long they had known each other. She had filed 3 different, quote, separate support and maintenance requests. This is since last year. And the very last one was filed in mid-April of 2024. Again, and she was just found dead on the 27th. Now, separate support and maintenance allows for one spouse to receive court-ordered support from another spouse without officially divorcing. Now, even though Mica officially filed for divorce in April, she and John Paul have been separated for months. It's been reported that during this time, John Paul has had a girlfriend. Now, this alleged girlfriend's husband died 3 years ago from what was ruled as a drowning accident. And in a weird twist of fate, or serendipitous moment, whatever you decide, that same report indicated that John Paul conducted the husband's funeral. And multiple other people have come forward with allegations about JP's inappropriate behavior. Apparently, his aggressive and erratic behavior started way before his relationship with Mica. He had multiple traffic violations, and he also had a conviction for assault and battery. In 1999, he hit a woman with his truck, twice. Then he dragged her down the road. Then, disturbingly, it gets even worse. In 2017, an affidavit says that JP's ex-wife stated that JP admitted to having sex with church members who were younger than 16 years old. He also admitted to being addicted to sex workers, and apparently he also was having an affair with Mica in 2015 while she was still the family's babysitter. Apparently, JP had confessed all of this to the different church members as well. But instead of removing him from the church, they just said, no, you just need counseling. However, JP refused the counseling, which then angered many of the members of the church congregation, and that caused them to leave the church entirely. So John Paul was previously married and had children before marrying Mica. According to friends and family and even church congregation members, John Paul actually met Mica when she was 14 or 15 years old in that youth group, as I previously mentioned. Now, it's been reported that at the time, he was actually the leader of that youth group, and that this was during his previous marriage. So some people believe that he allegedly groomed her before then marrying her later on when she was legally an adult. And to level set the age difference, John is 44 years old now, and Mica is 30 years old, so back then he would have been around 28 years old when she was 14 or 15 years old. A friend that spoke to Mica the night before she died also posted on Facebook and said the following: I will not sit here and pretend that I know exactly what happened on Saturday, but I know a lot. I am well aware in the past that Mica has had mental health issues, and I witnessed her struggle firsthand. But I also know that in the last few months, this has never been used as a weapon to control her. The Mica I saw at the beginning of her mental health journey was not the Mica I witnessed in the last month. The Mica I was seeing was a grown woman trying to break the chains of an abusive marriage. When I talked to Mica last, she was making plans, moving forward, and trusting God. Her faith was her shield. She had reconnected with people that she had been isolated from, myself included. She was sorting out her new normal, and God was putting the right people around her. When we had our first meeting in years, we sat at lunch and talked until dinner time, for 5 hours. We had been in regular communication since that day. I was part of Mica's church for years. We did life together during that season. Leaving that church was one of the hardest things Brian and I ever did. We loved the people in that church, but God had made it clear that we needed to go because it was a toxic environment. We endured relentless attacks from the pastor. It was unlike anything we had ever experienced. In ministry, God calls us where He needs us, and instead of supporting and loving us, our entire family came under attack. There were attempts to sabotage us in our new church home, calls made to employers, dropping in at my place of business in the middle of my workday when I refused to answer calls, and the calls were more than I can count. Emails that were rants in writing. It was a nightmare for close to a month. So Mica wasn't just leaving a church. She was leaving her marriage. She was done. She hired a lawyer, she moved out, she was getting a divorce, and she was left with nothing but her faith, her family, and a small circle of friends. Was it hard? Yes. She had her tires cut multiple times, found multiple trackers on her car, couch hopped in fear of being found, and was hospitalized by her husband when it was completely unnecessary. She confided to me that she felt like an orphan and feared that no church would want her because of him. What she didn't know is that a large portion of us who had experienced the wrath of that existing church were waiting for her with open arms. I talked to her multiple times in her final week here on Earth. She was making plans to get her hair cut, getting help with her car payment because she was a little short after paying her divorce lawyer, and planning to meet us for the second service at church on Sunday. My final text with her on Friday at 9:19 p.m. was a woman making plans to live. What happened between Friday night and Saturday? I was so overwhelmed seeing two certain people on the news last night trying to minimize Mica by painting her mentally ill and crying like they were currently present in her life. So guys, that post was obviously loaded for a multitude of reasons. Not only was she saying that she was texting with her up until she was then found dead and that Mica had been making all of these plans to live and to live a more happy life, but she's also saying that she had witnessed abuse firsthand from the church, the wrath of the church as she calls it, the wrath of JP, John Paul, the pastor. And guys, there are so many stories out there about JP's awful behavior. Few of them have been confirmed. However, we do know that he has a history of reactive behavior against Mica. Anytime that she tried to stand up for herself or do something for herself, JP retaliated. In an old email to Mica, JP even stated that he doesn't forgive when people hurt him, and instead, he just hurts them back. He attacks people to cause them pain. And this was further corroborated by the fact that JP tried to seek revenge on Mica when she filed for divorce again in April of 2024. Because after she filed, scumbag JP actually posted a public nude photo of Mica on his social media. He eventually took it down, and then he sent her an email which read, "I'm sorry for putting a picture of you on the internet. It was for less than 1 hour and immediately taken down. I was hurt that you were telling everyone horrible intimate details of my past sin, and I just wanted to try and hurt you. Please forgive me. It was evil of me to do that." So Mica then sent an affidavit to her attorney, and in this affidavit it said, "Since the day that we became husband and wife, I have been abused in every way that I can think of. Emotionally, sexually, spiritually, financially, and physically. He has harassed me physically and electronically with letters, phone calls, emails, and texts, hacking my emails, hacking my personal Facebook, and impersonating me. Using my stolen phone to send texts and emails out to church members pretending to be me. Texting friends and family saying that I'm sleeping with teenagers from our church, also showing up in person at places around town, to then having installed 3 different tracking devices on my vehicle." I mean, very serious allegations, very scary allegations. And what makes this even more haunting, guys, if you can believe it, is that Mica sent this 9 days before her death. Now, people close to the couple have started to post statements on Facebook. These statements specifically address his behavior, and one of these posts read, What I'm about to say is my deep-hearted opinion. However, some stuff will be things that I have personally experienced. I've said it from the beginning. JP doesn't have the guts to unalive anyone. If you truly know him, then you know that his biggest game is stalking, manipulating, and brainwashing. He is the one who will hand you the gun and dare you to do it, or the one to place it on the counter when he knows that they are at their lowest. Just listing examples here. I'm not saying he did or didn't have something to do with it at some level, or that he pushed this sweet soul to the point that she felt like she had no other option. It's heartbreaking, it's nauseating, and I can promise you this, JP is smiling after the ruling. He is thinking that he is at no fault. He is thinking that this will blow over and that he will build his new church and he will have another brainwashed congregation to follow him. He is a narcissist at its finest. Don't stop speaking out. He will make someone's life a living hell until they feel that they can't escape it. I've personally witnessed many situations in the over 30 years that I have known him. I've stood up to him in his lies, and we have had multiple disagreements. I have always said that JP was scared of me because he doesn't know how to handle a woman or man who calls him out on his bullshit, who doesn't fall for his manipulating techniques. He's a weak man with a brilliant ability to manipulate and brainwash. In another post by somebody who used to be close friends with JP, it says, I believe the saying goes, getting a taste of your own medicine. And I mean that quite literally. You have used and abused for way too long, only to get up on that pulpit and consistently discredit your victims by airing out intentional, degrading, and inappropriate personal information. And doing that allows you to control the narrative. Now we have the death of your wife that you claim only took her life because of mental illness. Fact is, nobody was ever mental until they met you. A close friend of Mica's said that she also had to get multiple different phone numbers in the months leading up to her death because JP just would not leave her alone. In the same statement, the friend said, you don't have to physically pull the trigger to be responsible for someone's death. You can minimize your own behavior by resting on others' weaknesses. Now, many people online and in Facebook groups have put together another timeline of events relating to John Paul's statements at the church. This post comes from somebody named Robbie Harvey on Facebook, and I haven't been able to verify every single thing in this post, so again, please take this information with a grain of salt and do your own research. But it's titled The Mica Miller Timeline of Events. It says on February 4th, Pastor John Paul preaches a sermon on Korah and Moses and how it's wrong to rise against religious leaders. On February 23rd, Pastor John Paul files for spousal support. February 25th, in another sermon to his congregation, Pastor John Paul says a mentally ill person doesn't know they're sick. Quote, you have to trust people around you. The thing that's sick is your mind, and your mind is what you need to realize that you're sick. On March 10th, Pastor John Paul preaches a sermon and reveals that he went through 2 years of messages on his wife's phone. He found that 18 people reached out saying to her, quote, if you ever want to talk about your husband, you can talk to me and I'll keep it confidential. Visibly upset, the pastor followed up with, quote, that's a demon talking, end quote. Now, I just got to say, guys, really quick before I continue, this does stick out to me, whether it means something or not in the greater grand scheme of things, I don't know. But the fact that he's vocalizing publicly that he went through 2 years of messages on his wife's phone, first of all, it's my belief that if you go through your partner's phone history messages, that is an indicator of some type of like control or abusive behavior emotionally, whatever it may be. I personally don't believe in doing that, but if you're allowing it and you're like, go through my phone, let's go through each other's, to each their own. I just think if you're like secretly going through a phone, that's not a good sign. But also the fact that he then talked about his findings publicly and that he found 18 people had reached out to her saying, hey, if you ever want to talk about your husband, talk to me. I'll keep it confidential. To me, that kind of indicates that there were 18 people at minimum worried enough to where they expressed to her, hey, if there's anything you want to confide in me, it'll be confidential. Is there anything that you want to talk about? So either they recognize that something was wrong, or maybe they recognize something in his behavior. And I think that's pretty telling. Not saying that he's a murderer, but like, I think that does shed some light on the dynamic of this marriage. But again, for him to then just say this publicly, but say that's a demon talking, it's kind of giving entitled. It's kind of giving thinking you're holier than thou. So this was on March 10th. In another piece on this timeline there, because there's a few things from March 10th. And the next thing says, March 10th, Pastor John Paul says to his congregation, quote, One thing I'm going to preach about is getting rich, strong, healthy, and finding a hot wife that loves Jesus. This was while he was wearing his wedding ring. Then, on March 10th, he also tells his congregation that his wife was in the hospital and as soon as she got out, she left him. He says, quote, "She gets out and she just leaves. Just completely leaves me. Leaves everything. Drains the bank account and just goes. Guess what? While you're talking bad about me out there, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids to be able to be fed." Again, why he's airing all of this dirty laundry publicly, I don't know. I've seen it happen actually in a church local to me too, and it brushed me the wrong way. But also, like, the fact that he's talking about how she leaves this hospital and then leaves him, drains the bank account, yet he's bringing it back to him and how amazing he is, being like, so while you're doing this, I'm building a school in Africa for over 100 kids so they can be fed. It's just like, it's giving, I don't want to say narcissist, but kinda? I don't know. What do you think? So then on March 12th, his request for spousal support was dismissed, but there's no explanation as to why. Then 5 days later, on March 17th, Pastor John Paul tells a story of a pastor whose wife left him for a member of his staff. The pastor had to hire a third-party company to find her. Once he found her, divorce papers were drawn up. When the time came to sign the papers, the pastor couldn't do it though because, quote, "The Bible says divorce is wrong, and that if she wanted out, she would have to leave him." So then, that same day on March 17th, in a Facebook post made by Mica's sister, Sierra, she says that she keeps an eye on her phone, quote, "for fear of my sister's safety due to others' behaviors toward her." She goes on to mention the sermon from March 17th, and she calls out the congregation of Solid Rock Church. The very next day then, on March 18th, Mica posted a video encouraging others. She says, quote, "I'm just making sure my heart doesn't have any unforgiveness, bitterness, resentment. Just forgiveness and hope for the future. And peace." But then on March 22nd, Mica posts another video. In this one, she's suggesting that she was being abused physically and mentally. She also says, quote, "God hates divorce, but how does God feel about abuse?" She also suggests that her husband forced her to take illegal drugs. Now, what sticks out to me with this, again, just my opinion, is this was just, 5 days after his sermon when he's saying that the Bible says divorce is wrong and that if she wanted out, she would have to leave him after he had found her and how the divorce papers were drawn up, all of that stuff. So then for 5 days later, for her to say, yes, God hates divorce, but how does he feel about abuse? I feel it's just painting a very clear picture of what's going on in this marriage, at least to me. And again, I know I've said it before, but I'm going to reiterate, it does not mean he's a murderer, but it does show that there's some sort of manipulation, some sort of level of mental control, mental abuse, at least to me. So this was on March 22nd. Fast forward about 3 weeks to April 16th, Mica files for spousal support. Then, about a week later, on April 23rd, a hearing notice was sent out for Mica's request for spousal support, and a court date was set for June 5th. But then, just 5 days later, Mica is found dead. On May 6th, 2024, Mica's official cause of death was ruled as a self-inflicted gunshot wound. So then on May 7th, 2024, the 911 call was released, and this call is very heartbreaking and difficult to listen to because in it you can hear Mica ask the dispatcher if they're able to track her phone. After a couple of minutes, the woman asks why, and she says, "Because I'm about to kill and I want my family to know where to find me," and then the line goes dead.
Robeson County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
Let me see. You don't know where you're at?
In National Park. I have my location on, I think, on my phone. Find My Phone is on. I just did my location.
Okay, I'm showing, I don't think you are in Robeson County. Are you at the Lumber River State Park?
Yeah, that's where I am.
Tell me what's happened.
I'm about to, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am. Just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute.
Shortly after this call was made public, the sheriff's office also made a post on Facebook that was public, and in it, they discussed the 911 call, about how it went to the dispatcher's office and if it could be the call could be traced, all of these things. And then they go through the timeline of events after they recovered her body. They said that investigators located a SIG gun case on the passenger seat of the vehicle and a box of ammunition in the center console of the vehicle. They also found a receipt for that SIG handgun from a pawn shop and a receipt from a convenience store. Those receipts were both in the vehicle, and both receipts were dated from the same day of Mica's death, which was April 27th, 2024. During the search of the park for Mica, when they knew that the 911 call had come in, the investigators were approached by an individual who had found a bag near the water edge with an identification belonging to Mica. The individual stated that he had heard somebody crying and a gunshot while he was fishing. Shortly after, a body was located in the water and the victim was identified as Mica Miller. The SIG 9mm handgun was also located in the water at the crime scene during that initial search of the area. Her phone and her other personal belongings were also located, and there was a search of Mica's phone which revealed that she had conducted a Google search for national parks near me, and then the Lumber River State Park location was provided. So the investigators conducted several interviews, and they developed a timeline of events in relation to Mica's death. That morning at 11 a.m., Mica was observed on her Ring camera arriving at her residence in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. About 40 minutes later, at 11:38, she was observed again on her Ring camera leaving her residence. At 12:12 p.m., she was observed on store surveillance walking into a Dick's Pawn Shop, which is also located in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. A minute later, she's observed at the register, and she initiates the purchase of that gun. Then at 12:34, Mica is observed leaving the pawn shop after purchasing the gun and the ammunition. At 1:06 p.m., her Honda Accord is observed traveling on Highway 501 near 4 Mile Road in South Carolina. Then 20 minutes later, at 1:27, it's observed arriving at a grocery and grill located in Mullins, South Carolina. At 1:35 p.m., Mica is observed leaving the store after purchasing a drink and gas. Then, at 2:54 p.m., Mica makes that 911 call. So after John Paul's sermon, the one when he announced Mica's mental health issues and said that she died of a suicide, John Paul was released from his duties as a pastor, and a notice was sent out to the members of the church saying that John Paul was, quote, released for a time of healing, counsel, and guidance pursuant to our governing instrument. The Solid Rock Church website has also since been suspended. So while law enforcement officials have, yes, confirmed that Mica took her own life, people are of course convinced that JP pushed her to do so. Footage from the funeral that JP held for Mica has been released, and this funeral was held at Solid Rock Church on May 5th. Mica's family was not invited, but they were having their own ceremony for her at a local beach. But now, in this footage, people can't help but notice that JP was acting a little strange during his eulogy for Mica. Now, we of course can't judge people and how they grieve, but something about JP during his speech it felt off. He was shaking, acting erratically, he was talking all over the place. It wasn't a typical eulogy. He would go from complimenting Mica to then almost turning those compliments into insults or things that he didn't like about her. He would say things like, and this is paraphrasing, but Mica loved to travel, but I hated to travel. Mica loved to take pictures, but I hated taking pictures. Mica loved to talk all the time. I didn't. I often had to remind myself to listen to what she was saying. She loved tattoos. I hated them. She wrote poetry, which what kind of woman writes poetry? She loved to do dangerous things like skydiving, but I didn't, because what if I got hurt? She had all these big ideas all the time, but I never took her seriously. I just told her to pray about her ideas for a few days, because I knew that she would eventually forget about them. So the only time that he was really even complimenting her was when he was talking about all of the things that she would do for him. For example, he loved comic books, so she would dress up like his favorite comic book character. She'd also make him custom comic books. He said things like she was beautiful to look at, took great care of his kids, gave him great gifts, and did things for him at the church, even when she didn't want to do them. All of the things that he loved about her were things that he directly benefited from. But that wasn't even the weirdest thing. At one point, JP said that he visited the morgue multiple times so that he could see Mica's body. While he was there, he expected her to wake up, and at one point he says he actually tried to resurrect her from the dead.
It really hadn't hit me. I've gotten to spend, as Christians, of course, we know she's not here and in heaven, and she's, worshiping and enjoying, and I hadn't even had time to look down here yet. But I got to lay next to her body and spend time with her body about 4 times this week, and each time it still didn't hit me. I thought she was going to wake up. I even tried to raise her from the dead one time this week, and that morning, actually, I went to the mall later. She had bought me this dog tag, and the chain broke, so I went to the mall to get it fixed. And I saw a female about 20, 30 feet in front of me, and she was wearing one of Mica's dresses, and she had the same tattoo Mica has on her arm and the exact same hair. And out of just instinct, I screamed, "Mica!" And the girl turned around, and it was one of her sisters. And I thought I raised her from the dead. She's alive,
Then towards the end of his speech, JP was doing this combination of laughing and crying, which is honestly just eerie and very uncomfortable to watch.
Imagine being married to that. It was like that in our house all the time. Y'all stand to your feet, and Pastor Randall's going to close in prayer.
Now, because so many people are still questioning JP and his weird behavior, his potential involvement, he ended up releasing a statement through his lawyer. Unfounded rumors and false accusations began circulating on social media and in various media outlets, suggesting Pastor Miller's involvement in her demise. This created a buzz, causing local and national news media outlets to begin profiting off of these falsehoods on a mammoth proportion. Our client refutes any report that suggests he ever abused his wife. However, Mica's family has also publicly stated that they do not believe JP, not at all. In fact, many members of her family are still not convinced that her death was self-inflicted. On Facebook, her father Michael said that this investigation is not over. He ended up doing an interview with Law and Crime, and he made some really interesting statements. 1, when Mica was found dead, there were bruises on her arms and her hands, as well as scratches, which looked like defensive wounds. 2, multiple shell casings were found near Mica's body, even though she only shot herself 1 time. 3, near the area where Mica's body was found, a tree had a bullet hole in it. 4, her dad knew that she wanted a gun, but he was under the impression that she bought it for her safety. 5, Mica's voice was so slow during her 911 call that it seemed like it wasn't really like her. Something seemed off, and he feels like AI might be involved. 6, Mica had been tracked in the past, so it was possible that she was being tracked that day. 7, they believe that Mica was forced to shoot herself. People have noted that JP's lawyer specializes in AI and could have had a hand in faking her 911 call. Personally, for me, I feel like it is a stretch. I think it's a little too conspiracy, but some people think that you can hear another voice in the 911 call, but that voice is likely not coming from Mica's end of the call. And apparently, JP has a boat that he keeps at his lawyer's house, which is where near Mica's body was found, so people think that they could have used that to get away. I mean, you really can go down a rabbit hole learning about JP, his family, his kids, etc. But as I said, these are all theories that don't really have a lot of factual information backing them up. It's just what people are saying. What is more likely is that JP's terrible treatment led to Mica's gradual mental health deterioration, and that eventually it caused her to take her own life. Many people are wondering if JP can be held accountable, and on Tuesday, May 14th, the county sheriff's office released a pretty surprising statement. They say that the county sheriff's office has been in contact with the United States Attorney Office and with the FBI in South Carolina, that they've been in contact since the early stages of the Mica Miller investigation. Based on the information gathered during the investigation and the jurisdiction reasons, the sheriff's office has requested the assistance of both agencies. No other information will be released at this time, though, and anyone with information pertaining to the Miller investigation in South Carolina is asked to contact the Columbia, South Carolina FBI office. And on that same day, the FBI confirmed that they had been consulted about Mica's case, but they're not confirming, denying, or commenting on the investigation. They can't say whether an investigation is underway or not. But in response to this, Mica's family lawyer released a statement which read, "The family is grateful for everything that everyone has done to help find justice for Mica. They are aware that the county sheriff's office released a statement about the FBI being involved. However, the family has no personal knowledge of the nature of any FBI investigation and therefore has no comment." Although the family and attorney didn't have anything to comment about that specifically, we do know that they have been outspoken about other things given the interview that I talked about earlier, and also some things that the attorney has shared. Regina Ward is their attorney, and she said that an investigative report did not identify witnesses who corroborated JP's whereabouts, and also that no autopsy, toxicology analysis, or gunshot residue tests were performed on Mica's body. Regina was also working with Mica prior to her death on her separation, and she had just seen Mica on the 25th, 2 days before she died. In that meeting, just as others have said, Mica was giving no signs of wanting to end her life. Instead, she was working very hard toward living a life without JP. She never mentioned being single. She never mentioned going to North Carolina. She never mentioned anything that would seem off in the slightest. Regina said that she is concerned that the scene was investigated for the purposes of looking for evidence to support a finding of as opposed to investigating the scene. With the autopsy, which I would imagine was JP's doing to say, don't test for gunshot residue, don't do a tox report, don't do anything like this. Remember when Mica had posted that video saying, okay, I know divorce is bad and people say divorce is bad, but what does God think about husbands who drug their wives? And she was starting to kind of indicate that that might be happening. One of the things I said in my last episode was like, what is the tox report going to say? Was she maybe heavily influenced under something that he had been feeding her under the table, which isn't a conspiracy. I mean, we have seen that in so many different marital cases, right? But the fact that there was no tox analysis, there was no gunshot residue test, I don't know. Something just like isn't really landing for me. I don't think that it's some giant conspiracy that she was murdered at the hands of somebody else, but I definitely think that there is a lot of information that leans towards her being driven to do this, and that she was brainwashed, she was controlled, she was manipulated, and that she felt like there was no other escape. So because of that, could there be charges of involuntary manslaughter down the way? I guess we just have to wait and find out. So over the past few weeks, there have been a few updates in this case. And to start, JP's first ex-wife, Allison, filed for an ex parte, which, if granted, would basically remove the kids from his custody. Allison goes on to give the backstory of their marriage in this document as well. And they separated back in 2015 after she had learned that JP was having an affair with Mica, while Mica was married to JP's best friend. It also states that JP allegedly told her that he had employed sex workers, that he had been sexually inappropriate with several minor girls within the church, and his excuse for all of that? Well, apparently, it was that he himself was harmed sexually by his father for years, which we also know, as we talked about briefly, the father didn't have the best track record. So after news of the affair broke, JP was asked by the church to enroll in this program for people who had sex addiction issues, but he didn't. So then the church council members voted to have JP temporarily step down from his position as the head pastor so that he could focus on getting the help that he needed. But when they did that, JP then called a meeting where he basically told them that the new bylaws of the church, which, by the way, required council members to approve any major decisions, were invalid. And instead, he had 100% authority when it came to the decisions of the church. This caused most of the church members to leave, and then JP began his mission of rebuilding Solid Rock exactly how he wanted it to be. But Allison was obviously still very worried, because if you remember, JP had allegedly come clean to her about being inappropriate with all of these minor girls. So then when she was able to figure out who they all were, she went to them. She went to them to encourage them to go and report what had happened. But she said even though they told her their stories, they were all too scared of JP to report anything. And then when she went to the police, she was essentially told that nothing would be done because JP was this well-known pastor. They were in the middle of this divorce. People thought that it was just toxicity. I mean, it was pretty bad. And Allison essentially said that her hands were tied with the limited proof that she could provide on top of the added thing, the added element that JP was this well-respected person. So in efforts to keep her children safe, they had an agreement just that their daughter would never stay overnight at JP's house, that he would only have daytime visitation. She kind of figured in that moment, I guess, like, if I can't protect all of these other young children, I need to at least protect my own. And he apparently agreed to this. So as Mica and JP's relationship progressed and then they got married, Allison viewed Mica as kind of this safety net for her children. She trusted that she would keep them safe. But then in 2021 and 2022, she noticed that things began to change after JP and Mica's marriage started to take a turn for the worse. The kids were apparently often at church with JP on Sundays while he talked about Mica and all of her mental health issues in his sermons, and he would often tell them that she was crazy. He would say she was crazy one day, but then she'd be back in the house the next day and act like it was fine. So it was kind of like a lot of this back and forth. Then one day when Allison went to pick up her daughter from JP's house, she said that she noticed holes in the walls. She also noticed hinges of the doors and notes that were taped on the wall that said really negative things about Mica. Eventually, her and JP agreed that the kids just shouldn't stay overnight with everything that was going on. So they were going to go back to Allison's house after they would visit with their dad. But then eventually, JP's mental health also started deteriorating. And he would often call Allison and say that he couldn't get his kids for visitation because he wasn't good mentally. He also began talking to her about buying guns, about shooting, but at that time, JP was a felon and he wasn't allowed to have guns. However, Allison said that somehow he managed to get one of these church members, who is also, by the way, a police chief, to help him get his record expunged. Apparently, he even got a special police badge that said pastor on it, so that if he ever got pulled over, he would be let go. This just really goes to the kind of weight that he carried in this community, the influence. And do you also remember the alleged girlfriend that I brought up earlier, whose husband had died in a drowning accident? Well, Allison talked about her in this affidavit as well. She said that her name is Susie, and that Susie's son plays on the same soccer team as one of JP and Allison's sons, and that JP would actually use their son to find time to spend with Susie. And apparently this wasn't some secret that they were hiding either. All of the kids knew it, and so did their friends, which is obviously extremely embarrassing for the children. And Allison says that based on information and belief that she has, 2 weeks prior to Susie's husband drowning, he had gone to JP and asked him to leave his wife and children alone. So obviously Allison's red flags are completely waving and flying up now that Mica and Susie's husband are both dead and Susie and JP have just kind of gone out gallivanting around the town, right? So all of this is bad enough, and the kids have been put in the middle of everything for years. They knew Mica, so they were obviously struggling with her death, and Allison also knew Mica, and Mica had reached out to her to figure out how to leave JP, and she had also said that she was concerned about the kids' safety being with JP. But it seems like even that hasn't been enough for JP to just kind of like take a beat and be quiet and, reflect, have some self-awareness. Instead, he has once again put the kids in the middle of everything. Allison hasn't allowed JP to see the kids in person ever since everything went down with Mica, but she was allowing phone calls and text messages. In these text messages, JP has allegedly told the kids about everything going on, and also talking about his plans of suing everybody to become a millionaire. So naturally, as any mother would, Allison wants protection for her children. At the end of the affidavit, she states, "My goal is not to keep our children from their father permanently, but until such a time as he can undergo adequate psychological testing, following all recommendations to ensure that his mental stability and assure contact with their father, it's in their best interest." There was a hearing after this filing, but the case was sealed, so nobody knows what happened and what that outcome is. But I think she's just trying to do anything she can to protect her children. It seems as though he's kind of a loose cannon at this point. Now, in regards to JP's civil case with Mica's family, that is still ongoing. Remember, Mica's family wanted control of everything in her estate after everything happened, and recently Mica's family has also asked the judge to change Mica's name. The name change would either restore her name to Mica Francis, or it would be to just drop Miller and go by her middle name. Now, this is because before Mica's death, she had asked a judge to change her last name to her maiden name. But JP is currently fighting against that name change, which I think that's just an ego thing, a pride thing. If she clearly filed documentation or went to a judge saying she wanted her name changed and now he's fighting it post-mortem, why? That's what your deceased wife wanted. Like, it's just gross. Mica's sister has also asked the judge to appoint a forensic expert because she wants them to help them with all of the finances and investigate the marital estate for all of the things that is rumored to be going on, the fraudulent transfers of marital property, including the money and the accounts. They would also like JP to pay for that and pay for their attorney fees. They say that in 2020 and 2021, JP took out 2 separate mortgages on their home, and they believe that with the mortgages being taken out plus Mica's contribution to the house upgrades, which were around $90,000, that she's entitled to equal distribution of the funds. But unsurprisingly, JP wants both those requests denied, and he wants Mica's family to pay for his attorney fees. So as of now, things are kind of just a waiting game, and it doesn't really look like the civil case will be over anytime soon. There's still a lot that we don't know about this case, but right now the county sheriff's office is working with the FBI in connection with Mica's case. They have been quick to say that they aren't investigating her death, but instead they are running a parallel investigation. They aren't releasing any information, so we don't know anything else at this point, but it's probably only a matter of time until more comes out. Meanwhile, JP has actively been speaking out recently. A TikToker named True Crime RI seems to be in communication with him and has been posting all of his new statements all over her TikTok.
Greetings, everybody. I am here to let you know that my silence is nothing more than wisdom and self-control so that we can win the war that is up ahead. And I am looking forward to presenting over 350 pieces of proof on what Mica thinks about her family and what Mica thinks about her lawyer and the things her lawyer's saying and the things that her family's saying and Charlotte and all these other people that are saying things. People forget that Mica corresponded with me more than anybody else on planet Earth. And I know her heart, and I have her text messages, and we're going to disprove all the lies that are out there. And there's so many lies, it seems like everybody thinks the world is flat. And you ask them why, and they say, well, it says on the news the world's flat. Or, Robbie Stinky Harvey said that it's flat. Or JLR Never Investigates says that it's flat. But when I get to court, I'm going to show you that the world is round. And you're going to be shocked at some of the things that you see that Mica says. And we're going to find out actually who is responsible for my wife's death. And Mica will have justice when it's all said and done. And I'm going to make sure of it. So thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you soon. God bless. Hey, everybody. Tonight's video is going to be a little bit more lighthearted than normal. The goal is to debunk a different lie every night, and the Francis family has given me a lot to work with, so it's going to take a while. But don't believe anything that I say just because I say it. That's as foolish as you believing what they say just because they say it. You need to look for proof and truth. And so tonight we're going to deal with something that Michael Francis said. Mica, my wife, had 7 days. I think her mom's married 7 times. Michael Francis is the biological father, and he said the other day on some show something to the effect of Mica's one of her tattoos, my name that's my signature that is tattooed on her body. He inferred that meant that I owned her and that I was controlling and manipulative, and I made her get that tattoo so I could brand her and stamp her and say that she belongs to me. And that's not really how it worked. The first time she got my signature tattooed on her, it was when we were dating. And I was actually in New York on a vacation, and she sent me a picture of what she had done, and I was surprised. A few weeks later, we broke up, and she covered it up with a lotus flower. And then we got married, and then a few years later, she got my signature tattooed on the other side of her body. But I don't think that it means that I was controlling and manipulative. I don't think it means that I owned her. I don't think it was a brand or anything I forced her to do. It was completely her idea. And I don't know why Michael would think that. But if you do think that's what it means, if somebody has, someone else's name, their signature even, tattooed on their body, if you think it means that person owns them and, that they are over them and they're controlling, then what would you say, Michael, about this? And whose idea do you think that was? Hey, everyone. Tonight we will deal with the fact that I preached the day after my wife passed and the announcement that I made. Before that, I just want to talk about the tattoo from the other night. The tattoo that had her signature, it was gotten back in January with her. She wanted a very, very thick wedding band tattooed on her wedding finger so that when she was working out or we were on vacation when she didn't have a ring, she'd let everybody know she was still married. That is not something that someone who's being abused does, but she wanted that tattoo and she wanted me to get her signature, so I showed up and did it. The reason I preached the day after she passed, the night before that midnight, I had 5 people at my house telling me not to preach and I would be crazy for doing it. I didn't listen, and it's because at first I didn't believe it. I'd spent the past 3.5 months doing everything I could to keep her alive. My goal was every single day
to find somebody, some way to get her medicine, because I told them that she was going to commit suicide if she didn't get her lithium. And I went to her pastors, counselors, doctors, policemen, judges, friends, family, roommates, everybody you could possibly think of, and nobody believed me. So to get that call that night that it happened, I'm sure you can imagine what a failure I felt like, as well as this just can't be true. It can't be my worst nightmare. There's no way. And so I thought maybe the family was playing a trick on me or something. The other side of it was, I thought if it is true, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to do anything. I want to just keep living my life as if it never happened, because I wasn't ready to believe that it happened. So the next day I preached like a fool, and then I made my announcement for everybody to be quiet and leave, because like a moment of silence, like you do, in respect. I did it kind of like, I don't want anybody to be talking about, suicide or mental illness or asking me questions, or I just wanted them to leave and go talk to Jesus about it and then talk to me at some later date. I was not prepared to deal with any of it at all. And I'm sure you cannot imagine what it's like to be trying your best to keep somebody alive and then to find out they passed. And then how do you handle yourself in that next 24, 48 hours? I don't think there's a manual on that. So if it offends anybody, I apologize, but I did the best I could with what I had. And God bless.
Okay, logical thinkers out there, here we go. Help me understand why. After my wife passed away, I texted the family telling them I would pay for all their travel expenses. They asked me for $2,500 and then $1,000, so I gave them $3,500. 7 minutes after the check was cashed, they posted on Facebook they needed money from all of you for their travel expenses. Help me understand why. I texted the entire family and said, I'd love for you to come and see Mica's body. Here's the times that the funeral home says is best. They thumbed up the message, and about an hour after that, they posted on Facebook that I would not let them see Mica's body. Please help me understand that. They said I forced them to sign some cremation paper that I knew nothing about, had no idea what they were talking about. Days later, I was given this piece of paper that the mom and dad both signed, saying they wanted Mica to be cremated, and they chose to have that, which I totally agreed with because of the way that she passed away. I thought that was what was best, but nobody forced them to sign anything, and I don't even know what they're talking about with that. They said that I pushed the cremation to happen quickly to hide things. The national average is 3 days, because after that, the body starts to smell. She was cremated 6 days after she passed away, so that her ashes would be ready for the funeral the next day. While the family was there, I told the funeral director, I said, let them know that I'll pay for all the urns that they want, with the ashes in it. I'll pay for jewelry. Like this stainless steel cross has Mica's ashes inside. It's the only ashes I have. They have all the rest. The funeral director called me and said the bill's going to be $18,000. I said, why? He said they all picked out 24 karat gold jewelry. So I said, please call them back and let them know that if I'm paying, they got to get the cheap stuff. And it was still well over $10,000, but I didn't mind, because the way you treat people is not based on the people. The way you treat people is based on your own heart. And so if you could help me understand the answers to those questions, I'd appreciate it. Thanks a lot, and God bless.
It seems like he is going against anything that Mica's family has previously said, and his goal is to prove them wrong. So it's going to be really interesting to see how all of this plays out. Personally, I think what we are looking at, and I'm not a doctor, but I think we are looking at a true thoroughbred narcissist. And we know that narcissists can be very dangerous, because even if they aren't the ones pulling the trigger, they have the power, the influence, and the wherewithal mentally to talk somebody into pulling that trigger, or to make somebody feel as though they have no other option but to pull that trigger. So I'm curious to know what you guys think. I will definitely be keeping you updated on this case as more comes out. And let's just continue with her family sentiment: justice for Mica. They want her name out there. They do not want this story to just die and go cold. No pun intended, obviously. But you get what I'm saying. They want to have her story shared because they want justice for Mica. They are not in alignment that she was struggling and decided to do this on their own. They think that JP had something to do with this. The root cause, whether it was mentally, physically, emotionally, somehow involved with his influence. And looking at his track record, he doesn't look like this squeaky clean guy, right? I mean, and poor Allison, my thoughts are with her as she's trying to just protect her children in all of this. So let me know what you guys think about this case in the comments. Do you think that JP somehow took more part in this than what legally is being proven? Or do you think that he is innocent in all of this and there's just a smear campaign against him? Let me know. All right, guys, thanks again for tuning into another case. And until the next one, stay safe. Bye.